Hey guys, I did that video recently about the garden irrigation and stuff with my pump down in the creek and the Ttape, and it got a lot of questions about it. What I'm gonna do right now is try to go back and fill in some of the blanks. As you can see right now, I'm watering my front yard. I reseeded this thing back in March, trying to get some grass to grow up here on this hill in this red dirt, and it ain't easy. But now that I've got some what I call easy water, trying to get my front yard growing. That's just a plain old field sprinkler right there, come out of an old Rainbird irrigation set, I believe was the name of it. Does a real good job. It'll water a place about 75 by 75, no problem. This is the base of the sprinkler right here. It's a 1-inch threaded pipe, and what I do is just step that up to the 1.25 inch steel T down there, and then put galvanized adapters on both sides of it to connect it to my black pipe. And to keep it stationary wherever I'm going to put it at, you see I've got a pipe driven into the ground right here. In the garden, what I usually do is take one of those big tomato stakes and drive it in the ground, and then just tie this right to it. Works out very well. When I get ready to move it, I just undo those clamps, slide them out of the way, tighten them back up a little bit so they don't slide off, and then just drag this pipe anywhere I need to move it. This is a typical field irrigation unit that you used back in the day. Very similar to what I used growing up. You got 4-inch aluminum pipe, and this was your supply line, and the 3-inch went down the rows. These pipes are about 20 foot long, not too heavy, but when you get 3 or 4 of them up on your shoulder, you're trying to tote them across the back of the field when it's 100 degrees, it can be a whole lot of work. These are the sprinklers that go in it, and about the only thing that can never go wrong on these things is this spring right here. Although I haven't seen one yet wear out. The only problem you ever have is trash getting up in it and stopping up these fittings right here on the end. Both of these screw off. You got a long side and a short side. What I have done is some of the gardens where I didn't need the distance, I would take the short nozzle off another sprinkler and swap this out right here, so I had 2 short runs going around as opposed to a long and a short. All right, something to keep in mind on this filter, taking the water from the creek and using it to run through Ttape. You got this filter in here, and you can see it's gotten slimy, and what that stuff does is clog up the screen. So what I'm having to do is at least every time I empty that reservoir, I have to clean this out. Sometimes about halfway through it, I have to shut the pump off and just pull this out, hose it out real quick, and stick it back in. It's not a problem. It just slows down the process. So I've got to figure out a way to do a better job of filtering the water that's going into that tank. A couple of people had mentioned something like a pool filter, a sand filter, something like that. So that might be a good idea. Something else you don't want to do is fill this reservoir up with water ahead of time and let it sit in your garden for 2 or 3 days, just sitting there. What's happening, the sun's shining in it, that algae is going to take off and growing like crazy inside. As soon as you start pumping, all that stuff is going to clog up your filter. So you need to make sure when you finish up, get everything out and let it sit there almost empty. As for the Ttape itself, this is what it looks like. It's going to come in flat on a roll like this, and it is already pre-punched. This right here is 4-inch spacing. You can get 8, 12, 16, I think all the way up to 24 and 36-inch spacing if that's what you want. I wanted full coverage down the row, so I chose the 4-inch. It's on this roll. I got 3,000 foot right here, the 5/8 size, 10 mil for like $90. About $30 to ship it, so say $120 for 3,000 foot of Ttape. So I can lay this down and get coverage on a 100-foot row for about $4. Plus the cost of whatever your little fittings are. That's a whole lot cheaper than trying to put down soaker hoses. Plus your soaker hose is probably going to run minimum 25-30 psi, where this right here will run 8 to 10, no problem. This 3,000 foot roll right here came from Morgan County Seed out there in Missouri. I have mentioned those guys a few times. They don't have the most easily manageable website, but they are very good people to deal with. I pick up the phone and call them at any time I need something and never have a problem with them. As for how this goes together, you start out with a 1/2 inch drip pipe, regular black poly. You can get this stuff at Lowe's, Home Depot, wherever. Usually comes in a 50-foot up to about a 100-foot roll. You're going to have you a punch. You're going to punch you a hole in it, just like you're doing with any other drip irrigation, and all kinds of fittings. This one right here, what they recommend you do is go ahead and put your tape on there. It's just going to slide right on, and then you just screw this down to tighten it up. And it's not going to slide off. And again, you're only talking about 8-10 psi, something like that. Not a whole lot of pressure on it. Then you're going to go back to where your hole was and put this inside like that. And then you should be set with whatever length you have already laid out. I lay this out on the row first, cut it off to the size, and then make my connection up here. And on the end, to make a little flat piece, I think I've already used all mine up, where you slide this through, fold it over a couple of times like that, and then pull it back. And again, you're not talking about any high pressure stuff right here, so it doesn't take a whole lot to seal this end up, and then you'll be ready to set your drip up. This stuff is really inexpensive and easy to work with, but one of the most important things goes back to that water and the filter, keeping that filter clean, having clean water to start with. That's something I still have a lot of work to do on, but it's working so far. Now, when you got a lot of different spaces you're trying to water, sometimes you get behind on it. You plan on watering one evening, and then it stays windy all the way up until about dark, and you never get a chance to turn the sprinkler on. If you set a sprinkler out here and you're 20-mile-an-hour winds, you're going to get water on one half the garden and nothing on the other. So you end up with a situation like this, where all I'm doing is basically flooding the rows. I'm just taking the pipe, laying it down in here. This is where it helps. We've talked about this plenty of times. Donald has many times as far as planting and growing in a furrow. If you have a furrow and your plant's down inside of it, you can run water in there and the water will stay inside that furrow. Right now, the ground's so dry, I'm just trying to get some water out here. As you can see, these beans right here are already starting to produce, and a lot more blooms on the way. So I'm gonna try to get them watered in as best I can. We'll get a good picking up off of them in the next few days, and then as long as I keep them watered, they'll keep producing. I was asked what kind of wire I ran down here. I could have run 12-3, 12-2 and gotten away with it. What I decided to do was go ahead and run 10-2 down here. It's in conduit from here all the way back up to the house, and I've got this one section right here to the pump that's still exposed. And my connections over there on the pipe, just wire nutted and taped up. I'm only looking at this for a few months anyway, and then I'll probably pull it all out. But the reason I did the 10-2, I never know what I'm going to do. If I'm going to take the time and run wire down here, you never know what the future's going to hold. Down here by this creek, I could see a situation where I come down here and cleaned all this out and maybe built a chicken house down here or something like that, or maybe hogs, and then I need more lights and stuff like that. You just never know. If I'm going to run wire, 300-some foot, I might as well step it up one size and have something for later on, just in case. There's a few of my little fishes down here in the watering hole. One of them looks like a little bass over there. That one on the left-hand side actually looks like 3 or 4 little small bass in there. So what I have here is a spring putting fresh water into this hole down here, and I'm pumping out the dirty water, so to speak. Putting it on the garden, and it sure is helping. Alright guys, that should pretty much explain what I'm working with. Just doing whatever I can to get water to the gardens. I would highly recommend some type of Ttape, drip irrigation, whatever you can. You don't waste any water. That situation where I'm flooding the rows out there, a lot of that's going to evaporate, but enough of it will get down to the roots where it will have some benefit to those plants. Later on, if the wind dies down, I'll set a sprinkler up out there and try to get them a really good soak. My last video, I was opposed to Obamacare. I'm opposed to Ttape. I am all for we the people. I mentioned guns and being able to have something to protect yourself should somebody come onto your property and decide that they would rather take firsthand what you have worked for as opposed to going out and producing it themselves. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in the right to bear arms. I think you should be able to protect yourself. Simple as that. I mentioned my buddy Tony Stewart, number 14 on my hat up here. And I looked at the video this morning and there were 14 dislikes on that video. I got a 14 on my hat. I had no idea so many people dislike Tony Stewart. I just can't explain it. But he's a heck of a race car driver, I tell you that. Y'all take care, and Lord willing, I'll see you next time.